Well, good morning, AFTA members. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. I can't believe that we're in May. It feels ridiculous that we're, a third of the way through the year, and that the National Travel Industry Awards is really around the corner. I'd like to congratulate all finalists in this year's National Travel Industry Awards. We're preparing for the finalist announcement on the 20th of May, so stay tuned for that. Well, this morning we are really lucky because we have a guest with us that is the #1 world expert in the seniors market. So welcome this morning, Bronwyn.
Thank you.
Bronwyn, I'm going to let her do an introduction about herself, but I would like to also introduce her as a new judge for the National Travel Industry Awards this year. So we're really thankful that you can be one of our expert panelists this year.
Yeah.
So over to you, Bronwyn. Everybody, you are in listen-only mode, and this webinar is being recorded, so will be on the AFTA website by tomorrow. And whilst you're in listen-only mode, you do have a toolbox there, and you can type in questions, and we'll do our best to answer those questions at the end of the webinar. Over to you, Bronwyn.
Thanks for that, Jo. Well, hello everyone. My name's Bronwyn White, and I am the CEO of a company called New Young Consulting, and it's a fairly new company. We specialise in market research and strategy for the seniors travel market. So what I do is super niche, but the company was created because I saw a real need and I guess a massive opportunity in this market for the travel and tourism industry. Now, before this, I have been a travel and tourism researcher for 20 odd years, but I've been in the travel industry all my life. So I went to William Angliss, and from there I went on to do a whole variety of things in the travel vertical. So I have worked in reservations, I've worked in wholesale, I have worked in retail as a travel agent, I've worked as a corporate travel agent, I've worked as a group travel agent. So, to put it nicely, I've been around. So I kind of come with I'm not just a travel researcher, I come with a real depth of knowledge of the travel and tourism industry. So yeah, a travel researcher is the best title I've ever had, I have to say. I'm very, very lucky. But today I am going to go through some of the findings of my research of what was probably the biggest study ever conducted on the travel planning and booking habits of Australian travellers. It was a very in-depth study where we did both qualitative and quantitative research, and what that means is that we sent out surveys and we also did online focus groups for basically the over 55s market, because I wanted to see where they're at. But over the last 20 years or so, I've been researching these guys, for a really long time, and I'd have to say over the last 12 months, I've seen a massive shift in their travel planning and booking behaviours. And this shift will be really relevant to you today, whether or not you're a large, multi-shop agency or whether you're a high street agency. There's a lot in here that you probably need to consider for your future planning. So we'll get on with it. And do we do questions at the end, Jo?
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to take questions at the end. I'm available via email if you want to contact me later on as well. So we'll do that at the end, I suppose. But what I'm going to do now is just take you on a little bit of a history lesson about, this is more so for the younger audience. We revisit seniors and I guess what some of the stuff that they've done in their lives that shape who they are and how they're travelling today. So it's really quite interesting. And the name of my company is The New Young, because these guys are so young and youthful and adventurous, and sometimes I think they're younger than young people. So enjoy. Okay, hang on. Here we go, yay. Okay, it's working. It's okay, I've got it. So what we're framing this is that there's an entire, what they called at MIT, an age lab. And Joseph Coughlin is like the age lab guru. And he talks about this as being the most predictable marketing opportunity we have ever had. Now, when we sort of consider and talk about senior travellers, we kind of think of the traditional grey nomads, really tight ass kind of travellers that travel and pull up by the side of the road and, you know, have a thermos flask of tea and spend no money. That used to be the case with what we call the silent generation. So those people are kind of in their 70s and 80s now. And what we have now is a demographic phenomena. So the baby boomers, of which there are millions of them, are coming through and they're starting to retire, or they're semi-retired, or they're retiring and starting new jobs and new careers. They're doing a whole range of things. But one thing is for sure, for a large portion of these guys, travel features hugely in their plans. They've been dreaming about travel for the last, 30, 40 years. So it's super important. And when you're planning their travels, you need to consider this, that they're so excited. They might be revisiting the places that they went to in the 60s and 70s, or they might be just taking on new adventures. So it's a really exciting, massive opportunity for the travel and tourism industry. It's not always been seen as an opportunity, and unfortunately, the ageing demographic in the over, retiree 60s market, has been seen as a problem, particularly when it comes to governments and our leaders. I mean, we have this guy here who happens to be the finance minister. So I think, what have we got, Josh or Matthias Cormann? I don't know who he is at the moment, but the equivalent in Japan, telling elderly people to hurry up and die because there's such a burden on the economy. I mean, that's an absolute shocker. So when we've got people like this in leadership positions talking language like this, of course we're kind of not seeing the opportunity. We're seeing them as a burden. And what's even worse, this guy calls them tube people. He's an absolute shocker, and he was in the news again recently, a few months ago, for saying something, equally as offensive about something else. So let's go through this a little bit more. So what we're seeing, that less than 10% of marketing and advertising dollars are aimed at the over 50s. So advertisers spend 500% more on millennials, on marketing and advertising to millennials. This figure's taken from the USA, but it's a similar story in Australia. I want you to keep this figure in mind because I'm going to show you a graph later on, and you're going to go, wow. So what's happening also is many ad agency creatives and account manager bring their preconceived lenses of what a seniors represent. It's incongruent with who they are. So seniors, the older demographic may look older, but on the inside, they think they're hot. They really do, and they're youthful, and, they're traveling the world and doing crazy stuff. Seniors don't think they're senior. Again, they think they're hot. So current advertising risks alienating and repelling, a lot of people in this age bracket, because if you put an image of a senior in your ads or or a bus, full of seniors, they're going to go, oh, that's not me. I'm not going away with a bunch of old people, when in fact they probably do look like that, but they don't want to be reminded. So essentially, broadly speaking, we in the industry, we live with an outdated and preconceived ideas of what seniors are and who they are. We as an industry haven't moved on, but they actually have. Now, this is the graph I was talking about before. And in this graph, this is taken from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. It represents household wealth by age. And have a look at where Australia's wealth sits. It's not with sexy millennials that everyone seems to want to target. it's with sexy boomers. So have a look just who has the money. These guys hold the household wealth. And, you know, in fact, if millennials and Gen Y is travelling, and often they do travel on multi-generational holidays, as you would well know. So you would see a lot of this with your cruising clients and, you know, and a whole range of different clients. The boomers are actually paying for millennials in a lot of cases, just so that they can all go away together. So this graph, you know, it really explicitly tells you who has the money. So I find when I show this graph, it really helps people to, I guess, shift their thinking, particularly younger agents out there. You know, we learn at university, for example, that we are to target people, and, you know, when we're targeting a certain audience, we kind of have to advertise, you know, show imagery and words that are appealing to that audience. These guys don't think that they're old, therefore they're not going to relate to any types of sort of old people images. They have the dollars. So you just saw in Australia how powerful it is. In the US, it's basically Australia on steroids. So the over 50s control 55% of all consumer spending. In fact, I think this has gone up since I've put this in here, and 80% of wealth. So it's huge. And we're talking $1 trillion economy. You know, by 2020, older adult spending will reach around $15 trillion. So let's have a look at some of the key differences and why I guess we've held on to some of these outdated ideas. So, you know, it was only 100 years ago, the life expectancy for much of the industrialised world was under 50. Today we're living well into our 70s and 80s and beyond. So, and another thing that's changed is that boomers have made the psychological shift from acquiring stuff and material possessions, not interested in holding on to things and buying, you know, for the most part, flashy cars and boats and so forth. They have more of a desire to purchase experiences, satisfying and memorable moments. So this is what travel can deliver to them. They're looking for connection, they're looking for memories, and they're looking for, you know, new experience. They want to be delighted. They want to be surprised because they've done everything. And like those previous generations of type travellers in their sort of 70s and 80s, these guys are not stopping spending. They're spending up big, and they're spending very differently for very different reasons. And they're living longer than ever before. So if you have a look at this guy here, he's, you know, this guy's going to work, he's sort of around 50-ish. 100 years ago, he'd be dead. But now he's taking off on huge adventures, both internationally and around Australia. Okay, here's the next one. Millennials tend to be full of debt and boomers are full of money. So, you know, I really want to just say, look, your opportunity is in these statistics. All other travel marketers seem to be ignoring these, although it is starting to change. So on a recent study with TripAdvisor, we saw some really interesting insight that they're spending on average $1,540 on accommodation. They're seeking out really nice 3 to 4 star hotels. They're seeking out their favourite airlines, and they're willing to pay money for the flexibility. So these guys are really super savvy. They know that if you pay a little bit extra, it's easy to change the date on your ticket. They know that the cheaper the ticket, the less flexible it is. So they are, you know, they're not too worried about pricing. They're more worried about the value for money, and, you know, things like flexibility in their tickets are really, really super important. So let's compare that with millennials, what's happening there. So So what was amazing, that accommodation spend on the most recent trip of millennials that TripAdvisor surveyed was spending $675. So look at the massive difference there between boomers and millennials. They want cheap accommodation. They're seeking out the basic fares because basically they have no money. Sorry, Joe's having a bit of a laugh. And they're posting up a storm on social media accounts with pics from fabulous and luxurious travels. They're kind of really interested in what everyone else thinks of them. So what I'm saying, and what I've found in this research, is that boomers and the over 55 are really seeking deep and meaningful travel experiences. They really want to come back with fabulous memories and travel stories. And you know yourself, when you go away, you don't come back talking about the physical attractions. You come back and you talk about the great night you had with people you're never going to see again, and all these fabulous experiences. And they generally involve people. So we've got boomers seeking travel memories, and we've got the millennials seeking likes. So there's quite a difference there. And yes, millennials are spending less than half on their accommodation. So one of the really amazing things, and even, I've been around a bit, that I was even surprised at this stat. So 40% of the over 55s are spending anywhere between $11,000 and $50,000 per person per annum on travel. That's huge. That was even a surprise to me. 53% of boomers aged over 65 plan on doing 2 to 3 domestic trips a year, 4 to 5 domestic trips a year for 15%. And I do also have these covered off in international as well. They've got more time available than anybody else. They've got more money to spend on travel than anybody else. And they're equally excited to travel domestically as they are internationally. And just another mind-boggling stat that came from the MIT Age Lab. As a global economy, this sector is the third largest behind the USA and China. So if you looked at them as their own country and their own economies, this is just how much money collectively they have around the world. So I'm hoping that I've convinced you that these guys are worthwhile targeting by this point. Now, I've got an interesting history lesson here. And again, this is kind of more for the people maybe on the younger side in travel agencies. I actually presented this at the Mumbrella Travel Marketing Summit, and a lot of people in my audience were 25-year-old advertising creatives. So I wanted to just kind of remind them where this demographic has come from. So, and this came through still in all my research. They're really fun and adventurous. They want to learn when they're traveling. So again, they're not so much interested in, those physical attractions. They're more interested in learning about the culture, the history, and the people around them in the places that they go to visit. And another delightful thing about these guys, they were traveling well before the internet, well before TripAdvisor and Instagram. To find out what was at a country, they just had to go there. So that is truly adventurous. And this has instilled a sense of adventure in these baby boomer travellers that younger travellers just don't have this today. So, kudos to them. And this is another thing I kind of remind the 25-year-olds in my audience that, hey, these girls were popping all sorts of pills before you were and going to festivals. And, usually a thing I add is that, and we actually knew what was in the drugs back then. So, it was all happening. And they didn't call it the swinging 60s for nothing. It's the era of sexual freedom, primarily driven by the introduction of the pill. So these guys have a history. It's there, And I guess it was just sort of nice to remind ourselves of where they've come from, that they're not old fuddy-duddies like this guy. So, okay, so what are they good for? And again, this is all the findings in my research. To me, I think that they're the tourism industry's guardian angels. You know, they're going to save us. Not that we're going anywhere. Times have never really been better in the travel and tourism industry. But primarily in Australia and in the Western world, it's because of these guys. They're accessible and they have a willingness to buy that maybe other markets don't. So, you know, from that perspective, you need to consider that these guys are really open to your advertising and any marketing or any emails that you send out. They're fabulous for filling low and shoulder season as well. So they're really conscious of over-tourism and they're really not wanting to travel in crowded periods. You know, I had respondents talking about the willingness to really kind of rug up in New York over winter rather than the crowds. I have been to New York recently in the summertime and it was pretty horrendous in terms of crowds. They're open to your deals, so just consider that. And the other delightful thing I found out was that they're even willing to watch your YouTube videos. They're all over YouTube. So yes, they're into the social media, but one of the key findings is that they watch your YouTube videos and they watch them all the way through to the end so they don't switch off after 3 seconds. Okay, so getting into some of our travel myths. One of the key myths around this demographic is that they're scared or they're out of touch with technology. Again, this used to be true of the silent generations. It's no longer true. So you've got to remember with these guys, they were around when computers first arrived in workplaces and they had to adapt. Like, that is serious adaptation. And I did it myself, going from typing itineraries on a typewriter to doing my itineraries on a computer. And that was pretty scary back then. But because of that, you know, it's quite easy for these guys to adapt to any type of technology. They had to just roll with it when computers came into use. So they're very, very comfortable on using technology and spending money on technology if it can make their life easier. And one of the things that really came out is their massive mobile usage. So especially when they're in destination and when they're overseas or, you know, on their cruise or whatever, they're really ramping up the usage of their mobile devices in destination. They're doing loads of searching on the ground. They're looking for recommendations. They're reading reviews. They're looking for maps, a whole range of things. So where you can facilitate this in destination, you're going to really show some value. Okay. This is another myth, that they don't use the internet much for travel research or generally speaking. I have been researching this sector for a very long time and I have never seen a heavier demographic using the internet for research. They are researching travel like nothing before, and this was even a shock to me. So they're spending hundreds of hours on the internet researching their travel, both domestic and international, and they want every single minuscule of information about where they're going. So this has a lot of impacts, which I'm going to go through you know, in the next few minutes as well. So this is where, you know, you have opportunities to really ramp up your content and really, I guess, in terms of differentiating yourself from the others, really facilitate that information and show value, you know, that you have stuff that they can't find on the internet. So there's a lot of implications here, particularly when it comes to customer journey marketing and the user experience. Your content marketing becomes really, really important. And again, as a travel agent, you need to show value, and I'm going to talk about why. And I'll just, here's a couple of little quotes directly from the research first. You know, they're really fun. I always think it's really lovely to put some actual quotes of some of the respondents to bring these findings alive.
Love the second one.
Yeah. I know. So once, it's not even, excuse me, it's not even finished when they've booked the holiday. They continue to do their research online from the time they've booked their holiday to the time they've departed. So again, that time from when they've booked to when they're departed, you have a lot of opportunity to upsell because they're looking for stuff to do. So don't just leave it, you know, make sure that you're showing value constantly or giving them ideas, or I've just heard about this tour, or, you know, this is really interesting. I've had somebody come back and they talked about this. Do you want to book a tour? Another myth, and again, this is something that would have been different 12 months ago, is that they don't like to book or pay online. So in previous research, what I have seen is that they do their hundreds of hours of market research, and then they'll go off to a travel agent to book it. What's happening is that with these hundreds of hours of research, they're becoming a lot more confident than ever before with the online environment. So they have the time to research heavily. They're becoming more confident, and they feel like they're a lot more in control of their bookings. So there's virtually no barriers now to the travellers to paying for large travel purchases online via credit card or PayPal. And a lot of them talked about, like, for example, I pay PayPal so I don't need to put my credit card into my browser. You know, they talked about phishing scams. They talked about a whole range of scams. I had one respondent who talked about using different credit cards in different countries because if there was anything fraudulent happening, he could pinpoint where it came from. So these guys are all over it. They're all over how to use their credit card on the internet. You know, they do things like favouring reputable brands. Word of mouth is really, really super important. And one of the other things that came through that you need to be aware of is that they understand that sometimes when you book direct with a supplier, allows for easier access to change or refund. So we had people actually talk about where they may have booked with an OTA or booked, you know, not direct with the supplier, and how difficult it was to actually change. So then they're going direct to the supplier. Another myth, and this is probably going to rattle a few cages, but you just need to be aware of it now. One of the things, as I mentioned before, is that they used to put their hours of research in online and then go to a travel agent. This is the first time that I've seen this really, really shift. They're more likely to book and pay online now by themselves than in the past. They feel empowered to do their own bookings more and more online, direct with suppliers. So this probably has many implications for you, particularly in your planning and thinking about the next 3 to 5 years. And, you know, their confidence increases with their hundreds of hours. Now, one of the things that came through loud and clear to me is that they said, well, why would we use a travel agent when we can find the information ourselves? What's the value in using an agent if they haven't been there, or if they can't find out, you know, if they can't tell me something different than I'm finding out by myself online? So, you know, they're really super savvy travel consumers. And when they did use a travel agent, it was generally when they've used a travel agent for a really long time. So this is where you need to really look after your existing clients. You know, they might have had a friend or a relative as a travel agent. Complex itineraries, they see the value in an agent, and large groups. So if they had an intergenerational booking, or they were travelling with a group of friends, so forth, they might use an agent. So again, you need to see this as an opportunity rather than a threat. It's really important So start thinking about how you can add value to these guys that have loads of money. So from that perspective, look at opportunities around really niching your areas of expertise, whether that be niching in a particular style of travel, or you might want to niche into singles or a destination, or I know there's a lot of niche cruise companies out there. Even, you need to think about niching, a style of cruise, or, with particular cruise lines. So how can you add value? So if you have a website and you have your staff on the website, you need to do things like put where they've been, their specialists, where they can add value to their hundreds of hours of research. And this is really interesting too, and something that I hadn't seen, say, 12 months ago. Previously, I would say that these guys didn't really care about, the environment, or, I mean, they did care about it, but it's the first time I've seen them talk about ethical travel. So I had quite a few come through and talk to me about fair trade activities, their footprint, if they're visiting local communities. They want to make sure that they're not, impacting on that local community. They're talking about ethical travel. So this was again really interesting, and they show real concern about climate change and their future generations. So as their grandkids are being born, they're saying things like, well, what's going to happen to them? What sort of a world are we leaving them? Another myth, that they want to tick off the main bucket lists. Again, this is something of the previous generations. This has really shifted as well. Travel for this demographic cohort is all about the humans. So the people you travel with and the people you meet along the way. So what they talked about was meeting people in local communities, or meeting new friends on the cruise. So they might make lifelong friendships. They might meet people along the way that they'll never see again. Travel, they'll use it to reconnect relationships. So the kids might have left home, husband and wife are reconnecting and getting to know each other again. Travel's a great time to spend with your loved ones, so grandchildren. So it's more about people. And if you go back to what I was saying before around, they're done with acquiring stuff. They just want to learn. They want to meet people, and they're quite open to talking to strangers. One of the things, I like this term, after I did this research, I thought, they're opting for slow tourism. They're ditching the hectic itineraries and these long bucket lists. I mean, they still talk about the bucket lists, but, they want to spend time in a place, or they want to really sort of explore and get to know a place that they're going to, rather than the physical attractions. So full immersive travel, they want to sleep in, stress-free holidays, local activities are really important. So anything like local theatre productions, local little art galleries, local markets, all that stuff they're looking for, local food and wine experiences. These are the things that creates memories. Yeah, so here's a few little quotes again from the research. The two relate to domestic tourism, but the one in the middle, generally speaking, they're talking about how local people, wherever you go, they have pride in their communities. And yeah, it is a joy to experience this sort of stuff. Okay, one of the things that came out of the research is I looked at the reasons why people travel, and this is really, really important when it comes to your marketing communications, I guess. So again, it's not to see the Eiffel Tower necessarily. It's about appealing to the senses. It's about learning, personal enrichment. It's about the environment around me. It's about how it makes me feel, like words like meaningful. The word humbling came out a lot. fun, quirky, authentic stuff. You know, these guys have done, they're very experienced, especially the travellers, the heavy travellers. They're looking for different, they want to be surprised and delighted. So, you know, and so many travel itineraries with wholesalers and the tour companies and cruise companies I'm seeing, they're all the same. You open up Sunday papers, all the travel advertising is the same. You know, have a look at with those eyes on the weekend. There's no differentiation. Everyone's saying you get 2 nights here, 3 nights here, we go to this town, this town, this town. No one's telling me about, you know, when I'm on the river cruise, I'm going to hear stories about, you know, witch burnings and castles and, you know, all the scandals. I mean, that's the stuff that we all want to hear about. We don't want to hear, you know, that it has 3 restaurants and this and that. Tell me what I'm going to experience along the way. And this was really interesting. Again, it was something not necessarily restricted to Australia, but there's a big interest in Indigenous cultures all around the world. So, and again, they're a very thoughtful demographic, which is a key difference to those, again, in their sort of 70s and 80s. They're interested in learning about, you know, traditional owners of lands, and that's both here and overseas as well. Yeah, so again, some quotes, and this is something I hadn't really seen before either. It was a big surprise to me. And here's another myth, and I have touched on this, that we all think we need to use images of seniors in marketing because we learn, you know, we learn at university that that's what we're meant to do. This couldn't be further from the truth. And again, look at your Sunday papers and the senior, if you're advertising the senior, you know, it's full of markets, you know, images of daggy old people. And even if they are, they don't relate to it. So just, you know, think about if you're doing any sort of advertising in your local papers, you know, I guess when in doubt, I'm advising use multi-generational marketing or advertising pictures. So use a bit of everyone. You know, you would go 15 years younger than this lady. You know, I want to give her a big hug. She is gorgeous because she looks like a hugger, I reckon. But, you know, she doesn't want to be reminded that that's what she, you know, might look like these days, post-menopause. So, yes, and the other thing is don't call them senior. So if you've got any advertising promotions, do not ever put the word senior in. I haven't quite worked out what to put in. Still working that out. I've got a few words in my research that I have tested. But again, you know, this word, the word repels them. They don't relate to it. And the whole bus tour picture. Oh my God, I'm going to show you some of the comments directly. So these comments are from my research. I showed people images, this very, very typical image of a bus and the tour group. So although it may be true, they don't want to be reminded that they're travelling on a big bus with lots of people with grey hair. So if you have a look on the right-hand side, you'll see some of the comments. Now, if you look at Nairi B, for example, she could be on that tour. But she's just saying, run like the wind. You know, lots of old people. Bearing in mind, the people that did this research are all aged over 65. So, you know, again, if you're running bus tours, try and avoid the bus in your imagery, as stupid as it sounds. You know, you can just talk about the types of things that they're going to experience in the outback rather than this, because they'll look at that and they'll go, oh, what a bunch of boring old farts, which they're not, you know, and they're absolutely not boring old farts, but that's kind of the immediate thought that you have when you look at an image like this. And there's plenty of them in travel. So, yeah, if you have a look at this guy in the middle, Grandpa, you know, he travels the world, you know, he and his wife and all his mates, and you've got the ad agency going, yeah, I know, I'm going to put this picture. So they're going to put a picture of this guy. The problem is that this is what he thinks he looks like. So he may look like this, but his attitude's this young, fit, youthful-looking guy. So you've got to market to him. You've got to market to the guy on the right-hand side. Another myth is that they're sort of looking for low-key. What really surprised me in this research is, you know, things like several people talking about, you know, once they're retired, they've gone off and got their dive tickets and they were going to do scuba diving, which they'd always dreamed of doing. So again, going back to that experience of, you know, they've been dreaming about this stuff for 30, 40 years. You've got to respect that. They understand that health and fitness is got to be a big part of their life now. They're very aware of that. And with health and fitness, it extends the quality of your life. So they're not looking to extend the years, but basically the quality. So they can travel more, they can hang out with the grandkids, and, you know, do loads of stuff. So they are looking sometimes to incorporate fitness, you know, whether it be walking or bushwalking or cycling into their holidays. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% passive, you know, with food and wine, which tends to be my holidays at the moment. So, and they came up with great quotes like this. I love this quote: being at one with nature without being too huffy and puffy. To me, I immediately know what that means. They talked about nature being humbling. Again, you know, we're in this big, wide, beautiful world, and sometimes you're just in landscapes like this one here where you go, yeah, I know who's in charge here. And it's nature, Mother Nature. And again, this is more for the domestic guys. You know, we're seeing the emergence of luxury escapes and the likes. So what I'm hearing with domestic, a lot of the domestic destinations in the market saying that we can't compete. We can, because this demographic, they're doing both. They're doing both international and domestic travel. So there's no competition. They're not choosing one or the other because they want to travel around Australia. They love Australia. They've grown up in a way that is different to today's generation. You know, they've been travelling around Australia for a long time. So they're equally as excited. So that's pretty well it for me.
Great. Oh, good. It looks like we've got some questions.
Okay.
Well, that was really interesting. I've definitely made the mistake before of putting 2 photos of seniors on an advertisement. So that's something I can send to.
Yeah.
And I think I was reflecting on, I think the Coke ad, they've definitely tapped.
Oh, they're great. Yeah, I've seen those.
Where there's that gentleman and he drinks the Coke and he's like, what else haven't I tried?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You go see him on holiday and getting a tattoo and going to a festival. So they've obviously, maybe they've read your research, Bronwyn.
Oh, they haven't paid for it. I hope not.
All right, so I'm just going to have a look at some of the questions that we've got. Oh, this is funny. We just had a funny comment from someone who said, as a fellow baby boomer myself, I fully agree with what you say. I just wish I was full of money.
Yes, yes.
Don't we all?
Aren't you full of famils though?
I'm very jealous of the famils travel too. We do have a question asking us about which social platforms do you know that baby boomers or over 45 are most likely to use? Great
question. Facebook for sure. So again, don't try and be everywhere for everyone. They're on Facebook for the most part. And the second one was YouTube, which again was a surprise to me. So yeah, go for both.
So Michael also asked, in addition to online marketing, do you still think that there's value in using magazines or going to bingo clubs, like where they're socialising and market through those channels? Yeah, look, you know, something that came through, those informal channels and the social channels are really, really important because these guys are really influenced by word of mouth and their social circles. So from that perspective, I say yes. And they all talked about the weekend newspapers. They talked about the senior. So
So, yeah, look, do what you can. And at the moment, we're in such a transition. Yes, it's all online, but again, a lot of it being word of mouth, those social circles are really important. I mean, if you're getting success from it, just keep doing it.
And I think actually a couple of people sort of asked that same question. So Ben, did that also answer your question around where this market's receiving inspiration and promotion from? Just type us a note. Good to see you online too. We've got a lot of questions about whether they can get a copy of this presentation. So just a reminder that it is being recorded and the webinar will be online, and we'll also put a copy of the webinar.
I can give you, PDF, no problem.
In PDF format so that, that they can download. And of course, on the screen are Bronwyn's contact details. So if you're from an organisation that wants more of the information behind this presentation, just reach out to Bronwyn and negotiate getting that. We have a question from Lisa, or a statement. I operate a walking tour company and notice that our clients are primarily 60 plus active travellers, both domestically and internationally. Happy to work with agents.
Awesome.
That's great. Thank you for that comment.
Yay.
Lisa. Anybody else got any questions? Well, we've got lots of positive comments. It was very interesting.
Great.
All right. Well, we might wrap it up there then if there's no other questions. Of course, you've got Bronwyn's email. You've got our email here at AFTA. And so you can ask us any questions. Look, we do have one more that just jumped in. Thank you to Neil. Do you think 55 and over would enjoy skiing in Canada?
Yes.
Learn how to ski.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. If their knees are up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if anyone out there has been in the gym during the daytime.
So many seniors.
Oh my God, they're out there working on their quads.
Yeah.
There's a senior, I reckon he'd be sort of, definitely in his late 60s at my gym, who specifically comes to work his legs out so that he can go skiing in Japan.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a personal example. My dad is 68, just turned 68 in February, and he took up cycling 2 years ago because in retirement he wanted to maintain being physically active.
Yeah.
And last year he went on a cycling tour to Europe and he climbed some of those big mountains that they find on the Tour de France. So he did Mont Ventoux, he did Alpe d'Huez. So here's somebody that's come to this sport later in his life and is going on group tours to Europe to participate in active travel. So and he would not see himself as someone old going on a bus, but inevitably he was on a bus with other people, but still enjoying active lifestyle.
Yeah, and the thing with the bus tours, I mean, there is definitely a place. And one thing in one of my focus groups a few years ago was that they talked about bus, talking about transitioning to some bus tours when they realised they could no longer drive. They didn't want to stop travelling, but this enabled him to keep travelling. So again, sort of it's framing it in a really positive way, that, tours are a great way to travel anyway, you can relax and take it easy, and to keep travelling.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we've got lots of comments saying thank you. So just a reminder that following this webinar, you will get a short survey, and if you could fill it out, we'd really appreciate that. That just lets us know what you thought of today and also what sort of webinars you might want to receive in the future. So thank you all for your time, Bronwyn. Thank you so much for your time and sharing these insights with us.
It's a pleasure.
And hopefully, with adopting some of this knowledge, we can continue to grow our market share of this market.
It's going to be big for everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.